way that I play or think that it makes a difference, but I'll tell you one thing that I do know, that it's well, just about everything, really. I mean, it's the whole, John and I had a big discussion about this recently, where the whole key issue is concept. Concept, and how do you teach concept? You know, that's the only way that I could really relay to you what concept is by trying to show you subtle things like that. And some of you may see it, and it could be a huge revelation, and others may look and say, I don't get it. It's just like anything else in life, the subjectivity of something is you put one thing in front of 10 different people, and what are they going to see? You know, what are they going to see? 10 different things. And you're trying to make the same point. And it's very, very important that I impart that to you, and that concept is pretty much 90% of the game. And once you understand the concept of it, and you can alter your concept to fit certain styles of music, eventually your identity will just come through by itself. And now I get to just take those two examples right there and get into them even deeper, developing grooves and whatnot, which I can do if you'd like. But the main issue that I wanted to touch upon was to show you the different physiology. And the other thing is that each one of you has a different physiology as well, where, you know, you may look at a drummer and say, well, like, I want to play just like him, and he plays real deliberate, and this is his style. You know, meanwhile, maybe he's built kind of stocky, and he has a different kind of, that's just his person, you know. You could be a bodybuilder or something, and you could be thin, or like me, I have like real long arms, you know. My arms are they're just long, you know. And they're like an orangutan, you know. And I have big hands. So somebody who has smaller hands may, you know, be able to touch the stick in a certain way or hold it in a certain way where it's real, almost like little mitts, and you think to yourself, oh, I look so comfortable, you know. And I've got these big old, I've went through this for years, you know, and I've got these big old clunky hands, and what do I do? So I had to adjust, you know. I used to watch Tony Williams play Billy Cobham, and I would want to play just like them, and then after a while I realized I'm not built like them, you know, and besides, well, I'm just going to be the second-rate Billy Cobham, so what's the point, you know? I might as well be me, you know, at least, whether it's as good or worse or, you know, I mean, at least it's me, you know, that's all you can be. And no matter how much you learn, you can't change the fact that you're you. Or no matter where you move to or what city you go to, you're always going to take you with you, you know. You got to drag that baggage, man, you know. You got to drag it along. You can't get rid of it. Can't hide from it. So that's the most important thing for me, is just letting your identity, because then people want to play with you because you're you. And it's very, very true. And obviously you want other musicians to want to play with you. Otherwise, you know, you could be up there playing drum solos and saying, man, I've got the most amazing chops in the world, dig me. Nobody wants to play with you. What does that tell you? You know, you're going to go out and play drum solos all day. Try to get a job playing drum solos all day long. Okay. Hey, that would be great for drummers, wouldn't it? It'd be great. I mean, if I knew there was a market, you know, to just go and book a gig playing drum solos, yeah, maybe it'll happen, really. But people gotta play with people, man. Now, one more thing I wanted to say before I take any questions is that also, you may have noticed that I took one very simple little 7/8 motif and tried to stretch it as much as I could. And I think that's important. Another important tool in, for example, developing creativity would be like taking 3 notes, just a triplet, and saying, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? Okay, well, I can play organ. Or etc. You know what I'm saying? Or and then, you know, etc. You know, and or I could put a flam on it, you know. And then you could change the rhythmic feel here. So you see what I'm getting at? In other words, you're just dealing with a triplet motif. And you could change the stickings around the drums, you could add flams, play 1 bar in 6/8, 1 bar in 4/4. So you could take one little rhythmic idea of 3 notes and try to change it and embellish it and orchestrate it around the drum set or stylistically or however, and figure out how many ways you can incorporate it. If I incorporated it in the bebop context between my left-handed snare drum, then it was sort of like inside the groove because the cymbal was keeping the time. You follow what I'm saying? Whereas if I'm playing it around the drums with flams like I did that's sort of a rhythm in itself. And so then you analyze and say, well, what is it that I'm doing with it now? Am I playing it like a fill, or am I playing it as a groove? So if you just take one thing like that and alter and see how many contexts you can put it in, it's a good creativity exercise. Was that boring? I hope not. Okay. Something you heard before? Probably. Maybe. But anyway, okay, so enough of my spiel. Is there anything anybody would like to say?
Yo.
Besides go home? Yeah. I can't see you. Is there a reason that all the lights... Oh, there we go. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I saw you yesterday play in Amsterdam, and you played a couple of solos, you know, between the band and. But you're hard to follow, you know. And now, what I was thinking, how do you keep time? How do you count it for yourself? What do you think when you play this incredible solos? You know, there was a guy next to me. He was trying to count, you know, and it was. Two bars, and he was, where's the one? So.
I see. Did everybody hear that question? Pretty much about in terms of soloing and blah blah blah, like and playing. No. How do I count internally? How do I know? Because sometimes it's hard to follow me. Well, that probably only has to do only has to do with largely with my phrases, the way that I phrase things. I mean, you take one phrase, and depending on how you're used to hearing it, you may hear it one way, and I may hear it another way, you know. those are triplet oriented. Now if I was going to play like, now those are fives. Now to somebody that's not used to hearing, they might interpret that as something like a triplet with some kind of space. So you take one rhythm, like a 5/2, and you stretch it, it can become something else. You can stretch it or pull it back. And that's one of the reasons that, see, in other words, everyone will hear it differently, but that's one of the reasons why a lot of times I keep my hi-hat going. Now, that's one part of the explanation. The other thing is that I keep my time internally, and I don't really count things anymore. I feel a pulse. All that I do is rely on, I don't count numbers and beats, although I can do it, but if I start doing that, then I'm not thinking anymore. I mean, well, excuse me, take that back. I'm not just being anymore, I'm thinking. And obviously that's going to create a middle barrier between what's coming out. You know what I'm saying? It's just something that sort of gets in the way. And of the spontaneousness and letting it flow. So if I'm playing in any kind of 4/4, I just hear, I know where the downbeats are, and I know I can feel 4/4. I mean, most people can feel 8-bar phrases in 4/4 without counting. They don't need to count them, they can just feel it. So the same with me, you know, and when I play, I don't count it, I just do it. And I just know where the time is. And I have a specific way of phrasing that is just part of my identity, and that's how I do it. And if I play at odd times or whatever, like when I played the solo earlier in 7, I'm just hearing the group. I'm hearing it, and I'm not sitting there counting it, I just know where it is. Because it's a pretty straightforward, symmetrical 7. It's very symmetrical, and there are accents every time, just like 4/4, except it's not. And if you keep doing it over and over and over, after a while it gets inside your brain. Just like if you were going to brand a cow, but you have to do it over and over and over. I'm not a rapper, but you know what I mean? Wouldn't it be great to hear a rap tune in 7 like that? Someone will do it. Except that by the time he gets on the radio in LA, it'll probably sound like this. I just shot a cop just the other day. Tried to steal my wife and I blew his head away. Great lyrics, huh? We talked about that on the way over here. About the depth of culture in the lyrics today. God, incredible. So anyway, that's how I just sort of feel it, you know, and as the more comfortable I am with it, the easier it is for me. But playing these different kinds of grooves is just like a language. You have to keep doing it over and over and over and over and over, you know. And otherwise you get into different subdivisions of different time signatures. If you're not used to them, you've got to think about them more, you know. Where you'll notice within yourself where your shift in awareness goes. Your shift in awareness, if you are not comfortable with a specific time signature, with specific subdivisions, your awareness will shift from what you're playing to almost counting what it is, so that what you're playing becomes secondary, and keeping your place in the bar is primary. So that's how you'll know that you obviously that you're more uncomfortable. Okay? And after a while, when you're more comfortable, your awareness will shift where that you're just aware in the back of your mind that you're playing with a specific kind of subdivision and that your primary focus is on what it is that you're doing. So, I hope that was a valid answer. Is there any other questions? I smoke Marlboro cigarettes. And duty-free. Actually, I prefer the American ones because I can collect the mileage, and after I save up the mileage, I can get a free Swiss Army watch. Okay. It's a free airline miles.
I have a question.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Oh God, where's my Rolex? Ah! You know, I really feel that. And because if you can't laugh, you're in trouble. Especially if you can't laugh at yourself.
Ik ga niemand te vragen, we zitten gewoon overheen te doen.
That's how I feel. Okay. What is your question?
The question is it difficult for you to play simple things because you're a very technical drummer, playing with steel or playing with Johnny Mitchell instead of playing with Zappa or playing jazz?
Did everybody hear the question?
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's not. It's not. But that's a very good question. It is. I mean, I'm in all humility, I'm just saying no. But sometimes it is. It depends on the context of what I'm doing. It depends on exactly what it is that I'm doing. Actually, believe it or not, one of the more difficult recording sessions that I had to do was there was a song that was I don't know if it was earlier this year. I can't even remember anymore. I've been on the road so long. But there was a ballad that Madonna had released in conjunction with this baseball movie called This Used to Be My Playground. And I played on the track. And I got called to play on the track. And I showed up, and I was in and out of there in 2 hours. The only thing I played was some ride cymbal. But do you know how difficult it was to record that? Because when I got to the studio, the only thing that was on tape was there was a guide rhythm from a drum machine which was erased, and a funny sounding little click track playing quarter notes, and an orchestra playing long tones, and a mini-mode bass that was not quantized or adjusted or metrically corrected to fit the click. And the reason that the producer said that he left it uncorrected was because of the feel. He wanted this feel. Meanwhile, which the guy is a great producer. I mean, he's done all of her hits and all this, and he knows exactly how to use the machines and all this. But for me, becoming an overdub, I had an orchestra playing footballs, you know, and a mini mode that was like all over the place, not giving me any real like groove. It was real syrupy kind of bass, you know. And so here I am trying to overdub, and I'm trying to play right with the click, and I'm not locking up the bass, and just doing that was a nightmare. I had to try to adjust. Who am I going to play with, the bass now or the click? And I had to find a middle ground in order to make it sound really, really solid. And it was really hard. It was like a strain for me. I felt like I was navigating through these choppy waters, and I made it somehow, you know. And that was very, very simple. And also, you know, the simplest things really are oftentimes the most difficult to play, because you have to make every note count and mean it. And there's so much space in between the notes that anything can happen. It goes beyond mathematics, because every point and every 2 points in time halves itself and becomes infinitely smaller and smaller and smaller, but it never vanishes. It just goes into another reality. And a computer can begin to assimilate that. You may have 420 ticks per beat on a computer quantization, which can seem very, very small in terms of incremental adjustments, and especially to the human ear. You know, to the human ear, people can think, oh, well, that's enough. You know, I could do, with my computer, I can pull it back 20 ticks on the snare drum each time, and it'll be just like a drummer laying back. But there's still something that sounds like a machine. You know, you think you can fool humans because the human ability to hear is finite. The human ability to hear a certain security spectrum is finite. You know what I mean? But there are frequencies that exist above and below what we can hear. And as you get older and as you listen to louder music, some frequencies go away. But they're still there. And similarly, you know, the ability to discern between certain rhythmic variances is finite too. You can adjust it and become much more acute by practice. But after a while, that's why humans, it's never going to be like a human being. You're following what I'm saying? It's like somehow when you become more attuned to that, you still know it's a machine. You know, you still know. And that's why you get 10 drummers that play the simplest groove. And why is it so different, you know? Why is it so different when, if I hear just this, you know, that much on a certain record, how come I know that it's Steve Gadd, even if he's not playing his own drums? What is it about his feel that I can't get out of the computer? You see what I'm saying? So, and it's very difficult to do that, to play space, especially, oftentimes drummers tend to lean on the hi-hat. One of the hardest things for me was to try to play a certain groove at a certain tempo and not play the hi-hat. You'd be amazed at what happens when you just take that thing away. The whole picture changes. Recently I played a gig, we were playing a gig with John at, in Austria, in Innsbruck. And the first song, my hi-hat broke. And luckily, Adam Nussbaum was there off the stage, and he came and saved my butt. And then he took the thing, and within 2 minutes, he had it fixed. And he rescued me, you know. Well, let me tell you, when that hi-hat went away, I was lost. Because it was integral to the song that I was playing. We were playing something like Ivory Coast, where I was playing just like a... Suddenly, I felt naked without it. I felt naked, you know, it was sort of... Yeah. Tell where your brain is.
Laten we echt een ton bacon.
Kidding, I'm just kidding. And I like it! Oh, boy. Does this mean we're going to be friends? And if you just, very simple, you take the hi-hat away and it's everything changes. I mean, you have to just... It's got to be accurate, you know. It has to be. Everything has to be accurate. Easy, you could say, well, no, you're still keeping time. You see, you've got all this space. And when you're playing with musicians, I could sit here and just say, well, it sounds like it's in time. And, yeah, you know, no, really, look, man, I'm just trying to show a point and share something with you and all that. And I mean, all that kind of stuff, because my time is internalized. Well, suddenly you put a click with it, and then suddenly you play with other musicians where you're not quite sure where they're going to put it, and the glue, the thread is missing. So when you take that away, you realize that sometimes you can use it as a crutch. And I think that a good exercise is to try to not use it. You know, when I went to Berklee School of Music for a while, and you know, which relates to the whole thing about what I was saying earlier of having a million drums. I made a joke and all this, but when I was there, the practice rooms were so small that sometimes all that I could take into the room would be a ride cymbal and a snare drum and a hi-hat, or maybe a bass drum, or maybe just a ride cymbal and a hi-hat and a snare drum. So I'd be in there for my hour of time that I had booked, trying to, you know, figure out what I can do with that, just that. And man, you wouldn't believe how it helped. I mean, recently I was in Chicago, and I saw some friends of mine that were playing in a hotel next to mine, and they were playing in the lounge, but they were playing bebop. And it wasn't like some corny lounge gig. They were really blowing. And they had a gig in this hotel, and the drummer, he had a ride cymbal, a snare drum, and a hi-hat. That was it. And he played the hell out of those things. It was great. I mean, I couldn't believe this guy, how much it swung. That doesn't mean that you don't need anything else. You can't get locked into the concept of what you need or what you don't need. You just have to realize how much you can get out of what it is. Because then when you add drums, you'll get used to doing that, and the importance of each voice becomes more apparent, instead of just having them because you think, well, okay, you know, yeah, you know, or whatever. The importance of it becomes much more focused, you know. Anyway, I'll take one more question here, and then we're going to have to call it a day. Yeah. Well, what I practice nowadays is usually I don't really have a lot of time to practice. Primarily for two reasons. One is because I'm working constantly usually. I mean, I'm always pretty busy, you know, and that's why I don't really teach privately anymore. I did 8 years ago. I had a few students in Los Angeles, but and the second reason is because even when I'm home and if I don't work that much, there's always something to do. I mean, like real life, you know, errands, things like that. And but when I do practice, I very rarely work out new things on the kit. I just practice maintenance, and I'm very fortunate now that we're over here playing, you know, jazz, and so it sort of like affords me the opportunity to practice unconsciously, really, on the gig and work new things out, you know, in that real situation, you know, which means taking chances. And I mean, a lot of you may think, well, God, you know, shouldn't you work it out before you go? Well, maybe, yeah, sure. I mean, there's validity to that, but I don't have time, so I don't really have a choice. So I may trip on myself trying new things, but at least I'm doing it in a real environment, and I'm taking a chance. And I've seen some of the best drummers in the world do that. So I know it's a valid concept. And even when I was starting to play with click tracks, I had to do it on the job. I had on-the-job training. It was like do or die, and all that stuff. Machines were invented, and I was doing sessions, and guys were programming things that I had to learn how to play around. That right then and there, I didn't have a chance to go home and, you know, buy my own and try to figure out. I couldn't assimilate it anyway, because these guys who were producing the sessions were not drummers, so they programmed the machines differently. So even if I wanted to go home and try to practice playing around with a machine, I would have programmed it like a drummer. Well, these guys were keyboard players, and they were programming it from that concept, from that perspective. So here, I was listening to all these grooves and trying to fit in with it, and I just had to sink or swim. Now, what I do practice is very, very simple maintenance things. Very simple. I practice very slowly. I mean, it's so stupidly simple. You think, this is what you do? Yes, this is what I do. I start by playing full strokes, very slow. I make a downbeat and I follow the stick up. I try not to stamp it up. No. I try to just follow it up. And sometimes I'll do that with one hand only, and then gradually speed up the strokes and make sure that I can see my form, that my form is important, so that once I'm aware of my form, then I won't have to think about it on the gig. I'll do the same thing. Then I'll combine the hands, and then I'll speed up the strokes maybe, or I'll play doubles, very slow. 3 strokes, 4, etc., etc. And then back down to 1. Then maybe I'll speed it up a little bit. And then by this time, when I add the doubles, I'm using rebound instead of wrist. I'm using rebound to the point where the more that I speed it up, I'll keep it at one tempo for a while. It's bounce. And then maybe I might do this. Accent the second stroke, just to get a little bit of wrist power in there. Things like that. And then speed it up. Then maybe I'll do 2 bars of singles, 2 bars of doubles, 2 bars of paradiddles for consistency exercise. And then, see, watch. And the more that I speed it up, suddenly now I'm using fingers. Okay? So, speed it up. And eventually you get it where you want it to sound the same. You can see the difference where you slow it down, get back to wrists again. So that's a good exercise for consistency, because as you speed it up, you'll use different elements of your hands, fingers, bounce, as opposed to arms and wrists. And then I'll do those, and then maybe I'll practice flams, different kinds of flam strokes and things like that. And then I'll practice accent strokes with my elbow and things like this, you know. And that's about it. Very simple things with my feet. Sometimes I'll just do unison exercises. It's really hard. One thing might flam. Are just basically meant to be technical exercises to focus you on the drum kit and to build your muscles and have some sort of balance, you know. And so you get a feel for playing 2 things in unison and another 2 things in unison, and then you feel where your limbs are going, you know what I'm saying? You get a feel for that. So then I practice that. And that's it, you know, really. That's about all. And then everything else that I do is pretty much on the gig. Because, as I said, I'm playing a lot. And I just do it when I get there. Because then I'm reacting with musicians and with the whole pressure of... I mean, there's a lot of guys who, you know, they sit in a room and they play the greatest drum solos. Maybe they get nervous when they go in front of people, you know, or they're not used to doing it in a real situation. And so, in a way, I feel kind of lucky that at least I'm used to doing that. But I still sometimes get nervous. Sometimes, you know, get stage fright or something. I don't like. I'm real nervous in front of crowds. If I go into a crowded building, it freaks me out. So a lot of times, if I'm playing and I see people real close to me, I get a little, funny sometimes. You know, it's just one of my phobias. So, but you know, I'm used to doing it, so I can deal with it. You know, I can cope with it. So anyway, that's pretty much how I practice. And that's what I do. And okay, well look, I have to call it a day now, and I hope sincerely that many of you will get a chance to come down tonight. And I want to thank everybody that was responsible for inviting me here today. And you've been a great audience, and we had some laughs. And I hope that you have gained some insights. I know it's difficult to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time, but then on the other hand, if you go in too many directions, it's hard to retain it as well. So I hope that I've been to some help to you, and you've been very enthusiastic, and I appreciate your enthusiasm very much. I mean it from the heart. And also, it really seems like you've got a very, very good situation here in this school, which I've been informed that I've had a little bit of insight from talking to the faculty about the jazz department here, and the fact that this is a very, very well-rounded school with people from various parts of Europe. And this is a great thing to hear, and I think it's very, very important today to have this kind of a situation. So I want to sincerely thank everybody in the school, and I hope that you guys are all having a great time here, and God bless you.